remarks. First of all, we welcome you on behalf of Art and Valise. This is a new consortium that consists of Lisa Bauer, Elisa Newington, and myself. It's a group that's... The idea is to try to bring some things to the community. There's lots of activity here. Toronto keeps getting greater every week in the art community, and we just wanted to try the experiment of, putting on some shows like this to bring some other interesting ideas to Toronto, to the community, to be collaborative, to introduce people from the international world, like Eva. We have Cecilia Alemani, who is going to interview Eva tonight after a bit of a talk. And we want to thank a number of people. So first of all, Scrap Metal, Joe and Samara, who collaborated with us, with the space that's just so fantastic in Toronto. And there's a number of people who helped us in this project. So Rui has been instrumental in trying to coordinate things and quarterback things. He didn't look like a quarterback, but he was a fantastic quarterback. And he wrote an amazing essay on Eva's work, and there should be a book at every seat. And you'll see at the back Rui's essay that explains some of what you're seeing here. We want to thank, there's some other people. Jennifer helped us, Sarah helped us with some photography for the book, and Roger Broadwater with the layout, which has been fantastic. And I do want to thank my wife for being here. That means a lot to me. In addition, we want to thank Thomas is here from Meyer Rieger Gallery that represents Eva, and he made a long trip from Europe, despite strikes by pilots, Lufthansa and all of this, but he's come here tonight to share this time with us. So, the other thing, I want to tell you a little bit about Eva, and maybe that the talk will sort of, or interview will bring some things out, but I first encountered Eva's work at the List Fair probably 5 years ago in Switzerland, and I was very impacted by it. It seemed very multi-layered and sophisticated, and she's a brilliant young person. She's doing her PhD in philosophy now in art in Prague, and I think when you start to see the work and try to unpack some of this, you realize that she's really quite a special artist. And she does live and work in Prague. The bio says here, studied at the Academy of Fine Arts and Academy of Applied Arts in Prague, and also spent some time at San Francisco Art Institute, and also worked in Vienna. And her trajectory is just astounding. I mean, it was the recent Venice Biennale. She's also the Biennales for Sydney and Lyon and Liverpool, and she just recently had a show at the Modern Oxford Museum in the UK. And we're very privileged to have Eva with us here, and she spent the past week installing all this work and making new works for the show, and we're very grateful that she's put in such a tremendous effort. Her schedule right now is really quite overwhelming, I'm sure, but she's taken the time to come here with us, which we're grateful for. Briefly introduce Cecilia Alemani, who's a curator and writer with Commute Now, and really has been involved with so many things, including the High Line in New York, which is gaining more and more impact. Also curated the Freeze projects, in which I was going to be part of that for the Freeze New York, and many other things. And I don't want to take up too much of their time, so we're going to go right to Cecilia and to Eva and let you talk to her.
Thank you. I think you can hear me without a microphone. We just have a microphone, so I'll try to speak up a bit. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for coming. I want to thank Art in Valise. The show is amazing, and I feel very privileged to be here tonight in Toronto. Eva is an artist I've been working with for a few projects. We're currently working on a project that will take place in New York in May. So if you happen to be in New York for the Frieze Art Fair, please make sure to see Eva's project. Maybe we'll touch upon the project a bit later on. Her work spans from sculptures to very complicated installations, from collages and drawings, and all the way to performances. So I find it, I've always found it very, very fascinating, and at the same time, very hard to pin down. So tonight we decided that Eva will be showing you a series of previous works, and she will talk about them, and I'll interrupt her with a few questions, especially touching upon some of the very important themes that have been animating her practice, including the theme of control, trauma, education, archive, and the body. And then we leave some space at the end for your questions to Eva. So before we started with the presentation, I wanted to ask you, Eva, if you can talk a little bit about your background and what it meant to grow up in Czechoslovakia in the 80s, and if that has any influence in your work.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming in such a big number. This is really completely overwhelming for me in the most positive way, and I'm afraid I will have to use the microphone because I speak really quiet and my English is very poor, so hopefully this will help. Well, I was born in 1982, which was actually when I was 7, the revolution happened, so I would be in the first grade at school. I'm just figuring out most of the things. And I have this memory which I share quite often about the fall of the communist regime and the big change, and actually also the big chaos in the child's mind, which was definitely my case. The story is that I remember they would give us education books in the first grade. We started to study them, and then like a few months later there would be new books coming with completely different content, and that this caused complete confusion to many children in the classroom. I remember because they started to question what is the reality, how much content is manipulated, what we are getting, what we should study, and how the world actually functions. So it was quite a strange start, I guess, in such an early age, but then I would experience very, still quite socialistic education, I would say, an education which was quite maybe narrow-minded and quite restrictive still. The changes were happening very slowly, and I grew up in this more periphery of Prague, in these blocks of houses. So it was like very, very standard school. It wasn't something really horrifying, but it wasn't something very special that we would support the individual skills and so on. Then, well, I'm not probably going to describe like every year of my
But you still live in Prague. So.
I'm still based in Prague, and maybe just to mention the influences during my studies. I studied at the Academy of Fine Arts for 6 years, and one of my professors was Eva Kotatkova, who is very respected artist, mainly known through his works in the 70s because of his performances which he would do in the public space of 60s and 70s. Where he was testing the limits of human interaction and communication, and then also I like very much his work, which is about the aesthetic of the everyday and using the everyday objects and turning them around or upside down and so on. And then the second professor, which was also quite influential, and I would like to mention him, was Vladimir Skrebl, who on the opposite is not that well known abroad, but has been quite influential on the young generation of artists, and is more kind of expressive painter, more intuitive in his work, and very much interested in psychology or psychotherapy, which is one field which maybe we will come to really look.
Great. Shall we start with some work?
So shall I?
Sure.
So this is a project which I did in 2011, and it's called The Education Machine, and it was exhibited in the Lyon Biennale in one quite large space. It was painted all black, so it was kind of quite dark and concentrated installation, and it was composed of fragments of an old original printing machine which was used in former Czechoslovakia for printing educational materials or educational books, all kinds of leaflets and posters or manuals for children, how they should behave in the school spaces or public spaces and so on. So for me it was a great metaphor of control and propaganda also and manipulation of that time. So I would find these segments in an old factory, and then what I would do was, because obviously I wasn't an engineer and I wasn't really able to put the machine back together to function, I would keep some pieces, some segments, and then I would recreate some other ones and create kind of structured installation which would remind something between a kind of torturing device or apparatus where body gets really micro-restricted, banded or put into different very uncomfortable constellations or poses. And in the same way there will be some apparatuses for not really printing books but on the opposite for erasing the book content. So there will be, for example, I think there will be one image of a kind of washing basin where there will be books in the water, and then what would happen after the 3 months of the exhibition would be that the books will be completely empty, the content will be gone, and then the ink will be just in the water, which is quite dark, like.
So education seems to be, of course, one of the main themes that are important for you. Can you talk a bit about it, and especially if you see education as a means of control or as a way of learning, and how do you think that the viewer can understand your message from your installations?
Yeah, I guess because I actually never experienced the kind of more free education, so I guess it again gets very much back to my own growing up. Not in some traumatic way, I hope, but rather questioning like different modes or ways how a child can be, or even an adult can be educated and formed or deformed by education. So, but actually in my family there are many teachers, so I actually really value this profession very much. I think it's really one of the most important ones. In the same time, I try to question the whole system, which still prevails in many schools in Czech Republic, for example. So I would actually never, there are just a few institutions within the Czech Republic that work more on this kind of either Waldorf kind of education or Montessori approach and so on. Not really that many of them.
Can you describe this, please? What is this?
It looks scary, I know. It's a kind of bending device, we call it, so that you, it basically puts you, all of these devices can be, or most of them can be actually used, so I tested them all. It's really something comfortable thing to do.
But this wasn't like a participatory installation,
No,
right?
no, this was just, basically, these objects were just a kind of, like a repertoire of props that would be lying around or standing in the space, and in this case it would really put you into this position where you are like subordinate to someone, like in this kind of strict hierarchy type setup. And this is the washing basin, this cage in there, and then the books, but I guess there is no view into the dark water. This is another bigger series of works which actually is still ongoing and it takes very different forms through the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and it's called Theatre of Speaking Objects. In this case, I would use everyday objects which would be then adjusted. I would cut some holes to them and then locate an audio speaker into them, from which a story of an individual who is struggling with communication can be heard. So what you would experience in this space would be that it would be a completely dark room. You would enter the space and then suddenly there will be a spotlight on one object that will start to speak to you, share a story. I can perhaps talk about a few of the stories which were quite some of them true stories that I would find in some psychology books, like real cases of patients or children with some communication difficulties, or there will be some stories that I would just take out from literature, for example. Also big stories.
Was there an overall narrative, or were there more individual stories and individual voices?
It was were more very individual stories. Also, in this case, they would tell the stories in very different languages, so one Italian or German or English. And
where did you show
this was in Kiev, in the beach center, where actually they would tell the whole in Japan, strange grid or chessboard or something like that.
Where was it shown? In Kiev.
In Kiev.
Yeah. It was part of the Future Generation Archives exhibitions. But then you showed it also in Valise, right?
I did, but it was very different.
In relation to this period, to the theater of objects, can you talk about the relationship between the art of object making and the more performative aspect that you kind of inserted with the sound piece, with the sound part of the installation? Is that a way of activating the objects, or is it something different?
Yeah, I guess like one of the point of departures or inspiration points for this piece was that I was interested in psychodrama courses or lessons or writings of Jacob Moreno, who was the inventor of psychodrama, and I was very interested in how we would use different ways, non-verbal ways, which is actually not this case, but to express yourself through objects or drawing or puppeteering, for example. So I was very interested in how, for example, in psychotherapy sessions with children will be a toy or puppet used as a kind of way to talk through and somehow to free your own suppressed feelings and experiences. This was like one of the points of departure. Then there was another inspiration point, which was Jiří Proha's work, which is a quite well-known Czech architect, but he also did scenography, stage design for theater, and he would do, in this case, not really realized body of work, but just a series of collages and aquarels. They would be called theater of things, and in this case, he would create these drawings. There would be proposals for some theatre to happen, where children would be using everyday objects, everything would be on one desk or a table, and then we would be giving voices actually to cups and spoons and so on. And it would be a kind of way how they could open up more about their difficulties.
And is this related to the theater of objects?
This is, I think, one of the first sketches which I did. I'm scared of the curator. This was actually the first phase of the project. The one before was really using the object as a kind of mediator without performative element, even so there was the sound, but it was kind of mediated already. But in this case, I did this project in Sydney at the Sydney Biennale in 2012, and in this case, there would be a real theatre set in the space, and there would be 8 elderly people who would engage in the performance, and what they would do would be that they would always use plastic objects. They would have some holes so that they could either hide in them or they could talk through them. There would be a hole for mouths, for example, for arms to put through. And they would again share their stories, and in this case it was more real stories they wanted to share with the audience. That they were not professional actors, but other people who again like struggle with.
And are stories they wrote, or you kind of
Most of it was really their own stories they would like to share, and then there was some. There would be actually a kind of growing archive because the audience would be giving their stories as well. They would be or stories written on paper, so that they would integrate them. This lasted 3 months. We would change the stories every time.
And like in an installation like this one, when the actors or the participants were not there, do you see that as a sculptural installation, or is the participatory aspect a very vital one? Like how does this piece exist beyond the performative aspect?
Yeah, it's really how to say. I would say I still see that. Yeah, as you say, very much as objects that are actually speaking. You know, so there is the human figure, but actually the objects somehow help the people to talk through. So they are hoping actually, or the performers hoping they kind of hope that they are invisible in this situation. Even so, they are quite visible, obviously, on the stage, but they somehow help them to stand up the stage and so on. So they are in the background. This is a recent work in modern art sport, which was very performative, but again, it was a kind of part body, part object situation in which the performers would again try to become part of something. They wouldn't be individual bodies moving on the platform, but they would try to engage with the sculptures, and very often they would get their movement would get limited by the objects.
So here you see one of your recurring elements, which is the idea of a cage or like a grid. So can you talk about it, and can you talk about how yourself or the performers interact with that structure? Do you see it as a construction, or do you see it as a way of seeing through something that would be usually closed?
I guess it's probably both of these two things actually, which is a very easy answer, I know, but I always was interested in walls and grids or rails for some reason, and wall for me is somehow more a kind of isolated aspect which really puts you into complete solitary or loneliness, while the cage or grid, it actually allows you either to look through something or to be observed, and you aren't really sure in which position you are if you just place the kind of flat grid in front of you.
So what happened here?
In this case, this was called a speech organ of M. A girl who pronounced her word from the middle, and it was actually based on a real story of a girl who started in communication and couldn't really talk normally, so she would always somehow decompose words into pieces and try to assemble them again, but she would always fail completely. So, and in this case, there was this repertoire of objects which the performers could use. And somehow try to somehow try to represent the speech organ in a very metaphorical way.
And was that an ongoing performance? So everyone walking into the gallery would always see someone?
Yeah, they will be there every day, which is quite amazing actually. They would be either resting or sleeping, because obviously the 8-hour shift or performance is not that easy, or they will be going through some object, they will be making or producing sounds with the objects as if really someone is trying to articulate something but is not really able to. So.
And so this is your piece for Venice? Is this your piece in Venice?
Yes. Just sit in a strange.
Yeah, I know. I hope you all saw this at the past Venice Biennale. Do you want to really start by saying what the overall narrative was? And to me, it's interesting, again, another question that I would like to ask you is, how do I read this piece? I mean, it's made out of many different fragments. Of course, there are a lot of archival materials, a lot of photos, a lot of objects, but then there are also body parts. So how am I reading this piece, and how is the viewer experiencing this piece?
Well, this installation is called Asylum, and I started to collaborate with one psychiatric clinic in Prague, which is called Valise. It's this incredible complex of buildings. It's almost like a city within a city situation with their own water tower and bakery and everything. So it's kind of isolated from the outside world in a way. And I would gather all these materials like biographies, occupations, and their medical releases and so on, but in this case I would never use them in complete form, so what I was always showing just fragments of things. If I would pick a drawing or some writing occupation or his biography, I would always make it anonymous, or I would just try to abstract it as much as I could. Not because I would be that, of course, to be fair and polite, it was one thing, but at the same time, and it was definitely important, but on the other hand, I really wanted to work with fragments of things. And what we will see will be a kind of database or archive of all kinds of fears, anxieties, phobias, memory visions of these patients, of people with, again, different communication struggles. They will be placed on this table. In some cases, they will be suspended from above, so somehow floating, as if you would view into someone's head.
Do you have a lot of stuff in your apartment? I mean, you collect not only in my hoarder. So let's talk a bit about this archival impulse. Where do you get your materials from? How many objects do you really collect? How many, can you talk about the idea of the library and the archive as archetypical concepts in your work?
Yeah, I guess I'm a obsessive collector of really strange things, but in the same time, actually, I remember once I was finishing some installation, I was really like almost like crawling in this pile of papers, still finishing some catalogs and collages, like here and like everywhere. And they told me that I can actually do like anything. I can just like do any images together and it would work. But I guess this is not really true. That I have the feeling that at least I think that I choose the images very carefully. There is always some. For example, when I look at the collage which is finished and placed on the wall, I always see the kind of background which is missing in contrast to from which I cut the collage.
Do you reuse the same imagery over and over, or is it always the original material?
Sometimes I reuse it. I have a few images which I still repeat because I somehow they represent for me something that are quite like strong qualities which I feel if I put that in another constellation it would still work and they would add some important elements. So I have a few images which somehow travel with me in my head but also physically.
And so there were two performers in this piece, the head and the arm.
Two performers and
what did they think about?
This was actually very bizarre situation because they would be wonderful performers who were just trained dancers, but of course they couldn't show any of their special skills, which was quite frustrating for them. But what they would do was that they would build almost like an underground structure underneath the pedestal.
Oh yeah. So what was underneath?
They would put mattresses and everything comfortable, which would make put them in like very comfortable positions because they were supposed to. What they were supposed to do was that they would kind of become a static part or section of the overall installation, kind of part of the architecture. There were also some elements of like distorted building or institution.
Do you see them as a performative aspect, or is it really like an object for you?
Actually, it's. I would rather see it as something that's really like integral part of the installation. So it's not that they would really be performers in the traditional sense. It's
a fragment like everything else.
I would say so. At the same time, I have to say I always am quite. I'm always afraid of all these things because, of course, working with people who are used in such a way is always problematic. But at the same time, I hope it wasn't that traumatizing for them. Showing just
well, they've been there for 6 months. So. Okay.
Yeah. This is actually a board which is related to the Venice project, and it's called Asylum. Sorry, I'm already mixing titles. It's called Psychological Theater, and it really has this spatial situation like a theater, but for just one person to look at it. And what we are missing now is an audio recording of an interview between a psychotherapist and a child who has serious communication difficulties and is able to articulate properly and also has difficulties in fitting in to talk to other children, and is always like separate from the group. So while you listen to the story, you somehow can perceive how like the development, how the children starts to speak, and there's this kind of strange arch because the child refuses and starts to be quite angry, and so on. So you perceive the whole development of archetypal possession and trying to communicate with each other. This is, I guess, maybe again slightly close to the fragmented body image, which appears very much in my work, and in this case, it's yes, from the pictures, there will be a glass standing in the space and a performer hiding behind, just probing his eyes to the installation, so when he would enter the space, he would see himself in the mirror, but then with strange eyes somehow collage into your own body.
And so I want to ask something about the performance process, because I know you work both with professional dancers and performers, but also with children and with people that do not come from the theater world or from the performance art world. Can you talk about you know, how you choose your the participants of your pieces and how their own stories influence your artwork and your practice.
I guess that in the theater of physical objects, they were very much part of the whole process because they would initiate the whole thing, they would add their stories, and they were really very influential in the whole process of creating the work. And then when I left, because I had to leave Sydney after like 1 month and a half or something with them, then they would just keep going, and actually I wasn't sure if they would change the script completely, or then there would be one person who would become kind of director of the theater, so we call it like a new company, theater of physical objects, which was kind of nice. So it's very different with every work.
Maybe we can go to the kid. I think we have some kids now.
I think so, yeah.
I think they're
Because when I work with children, it's usually some friends' children who I know already, which makes it much easier.
Which I think is something that is happening right now in the gallery as well. So maybe because you just showed a few collages and drawings, I want to ask you how much the tradition of surrealism has influenced this specific part of your work. Yes, collage works and drawings. Because we have great examples in the gallery right now, so I think it is a very important part of your influences, so I don't want to know.
I guess so. I mean, probably not in this case. I mean, that's a different series, but yeah. I mean, I guess the Czech surrealism is, I guess, quite. I'm not sure if it's that known internationally, but for me it was definitely like very important direction, and I always looked up to some artists from the Czech region, who would be Štýlský or people who would do paintings and drawings, different drawings and collages, but also book covers, for example, which are now very, very precious. So I guess it has been, I'm not really able to say in which way. I hope not in a too repetitive way, but it has been definitely.
So you want to describe what's going on here?
This is a project which is called Unlearning Instincts, and it was I think there will be, or maybe there was already an image of a voliere, which you can encounter in many zoos, and it's very old-fashioned displays. And again, the inspiration point was because I was interested in these feral children or wild children cases very much.
What's
so,
that?
Well, these like children who would be found in the forest, and then someone would try to educate them, which then, of course, there were many failures in that. So there's this tree form here from Avario and so on. So in this case, I would just try to build a kind of strange testing room, or kind of strange cage into which you could look at, and then there will be at some point children who would make a big mess in the space, and this will the audience. So then the audience would actually see the cage empty, but just how the children leave the.
So it wasn't a sort of performance not meant to be seen by the public. A way of making
the world, so basically the children. Exactly. With the props and the center of the whole. Cages, yeah. Cages.
Going until we go to we get to the slide of, maybe you should talk about this, because I always love this picture.
Yeah, that's me.
I got all your books.
Yes, but it's mostly again and some obviously, it's quite clear from the picture. I've created silhouette according to my body from books. So then installation is just a photo of me doing this, but then we just see the empty silhouette of books. This is another one which I wasn't really brave enough to do myself, which I really regret. It's a series which is called House Arrest, or maybe we call it Detention or something in English. I'm sure was the proper expression. So there will be always some domestic objects, either books or tables or chairs, or they will be turned into some kind of torturing device. Not a helpful tool, but
Is also in the show right now.
which is in the show.
So it's an portable apparatus.
It's a portable, unbearable apparatus. And this is a kind of funnel for a head, so once you have your head inside, there is almost complete darkness, but at the same time, the interior of the funnel is covered with education books again, so you kind of escape the education process.
Okay, so I wanted to finish here because this is the same artwork that is in the gallery. You want to say what's happening up there?
I don't know.
Okay.
Mystery section, but it's called Education Model, and you will see it also performed tonight here. But it was a kind of, it's probably again quite clear from the picture. It's a kind of metaphor for a kind of hierarchical situation and education again. This kind of fibers that lead you to some like different steps that lead you to different stations.
And what is the paper on each of the tables?
I have different versions of this work. I mean, different programs that I would create for it. And in one case, I would create a kind of special script, so each table will be kind of task for children to do, and there is more progress to the top. But at the end, I found it too descriptive, so that I just left it kind of.
So you don't tell them what to do. No, they do whatever they want.
Exactly, which is
I'm scared of going in the main room now. So maybe we can conclude here. It's a great way of finishing, and we want to open up if you have any questions for Eva.
Well, I don't know.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Eva?
Oh, wait.
We've left the mic.
The question was, how old was Eva when she started making art? Maybe it's better if I just.
Well, I don't even know for myself as because I don't feel like an artist even now, but it's hard to say. It's I mean, I would be drawing from early age quite obsessively, so it's really hard to say when it actually starts to be more thought through or more conceptual, let's say, or it's or educational. Yeah, I guess this was from the very beginning, but yeah. So I would say really from early childhood, but it wasn't really like too articulated.
I was just wondering, because of the sort of dark tonalities with which you're treating the subject of education, it's curious to me that you're doing your doctorate. So what's your experience been of education?
Well, I've been in education for such a long time. I mean, I was studying grammar school, high school, then the Academy of Fine Arts, and now I'm a PhD in the studies. So I guess I just somehow, I don't teach, but I guess this would be the next step. So I guess I somehow tend to not really escape education for some reason. Even so I find it difficult, but I guess it's just my destiny. But the PhD is quite interesting for me because it also makes me read a lot, which was something that I was missing in the past years maybe. And my subject is art growth, which is also something what I question or what really appears in my work quite often. I would be interested in patients' work.
Sorry, can you say art? What did you say?
Art growth, or outside art. Outside art. Proper.
In looking at work earlier, I've never been sure whether the people are kind of breaking free or they're being entrapped. But after seeing these slides, I feel like I've just read a Kafka novel. And I kept thinking of Gregor Samsa all the way through this entrapped in the childhood, and wanted to be something other than what his parents would allow him to be. And then Jessica mentioned the Canadian Czech artist Jana Sterbach. And I don't know if you know her work at all. Yeah.
Were those the influences of yours?
Yeah, I mean, Kafka is definitely, like, that's really a huge compliment because he's one of the authors I really look up to very, very much. And yeah, I guess maybe one of my favorite stories of this is Barrow or Broom. Yeah, thank you. About this strange creature, perhaps animal, perhaps some woman or someone who's living under the ground and then digging all these little nets of corridors and then creating these devices to protect himself, but also to catch some small animals. So it's I think it's a story that maybe can be visible in my works in a way.
But are there other Czech artists of your generation, you know, who were in one system and then are now in another system, or using their artwork to talk about the past and the present?
I guess so. I mean, there is many artists, I guess not only in Czech but also abroad, who question modernism and avant-gardist approaches, and I would say especially in the Eastern European countries, I guess this aesthetic and also the motifs are quite recognizable, I would say, and they somehow naturally come to the artist's mind, at least for me, they are the escapable, if I can say that.
There was one more question.
Yes. Thank you for your presentation. A lot of your installations look to me like living collage in this really fascinating way, and I was just wondering if you ever thought about them like that. And secondly, I was wondering if Max Ernst was an important figure for you. I know the surrealism question has already been asked, but some of your, and I don't need to at all say that it's derivative, but it's just interesting to me, the relationship between some of those collages and some of those Ernst works, and I wonder if he was a figure of any importance for you.
Yeah, definitely he was, but I would say maybe I was closer to some other artists, especially Victorian, actually the only woman in the surrealistic movement in Czech Republic which was respected by the other people in the community, and was quite, I think, quite a strong artist. She even spoke about herself in a voice, and she would wear very bizarre clothes, so a very unique artist, I think. So maybe she would be closer to my thinking, but I don't know what was your first question.
Oh, the first question was about a living collage.
I would say so. Even now I've been using this kind of collage technique in a real space because there is this black theater tradition also in Czech Republic. It was quite well known, or actually it was revolutionary in the 70s, and I think now it's more like kind of touristic attraction, so it's not that interesting anymore. But for me, I started to use it in my work, and actually it makes possible for me to create a kind of living collage or something that I could just show the body parts that move on the stage, and then connect them or join them with some lines or drawings or some objects that are enlightened. So I guess this might be the real life collage making now.